great little waltzes. You know the words, sing along. There is joy in my heart and a smile on my face. I love the world. There's a song on my lips of the whole human race. I love the world. Feel my spirits are singing, feel happiness ringing, bells never ringing on high. God is here everywhere, joy is filling the air, 'cause I love the world. That's cool, I like that. Yes. It kind of has that calliope feel to it. All right, I'll change the next song. All right, now I invite you to stand and join in singing our opening here, Ready for a Miracle. This is not a waltz. I'm ready for a miracle, I'm ready for a miracle, ready for a miracle today. I've got my mind into the one, I'm ready to experience one, I'm ready for a miracle today. My mind is open, ready to receive it. My heart is open all the way. I do accept a miracle, I do accept a miracle, I do accept a miracle today. Receive a miracle, I can receive a miracle, I can receive a miracle today. Big finish.
I accept.
Good morning. How is everyone? Good. I am Reverend Mary Dunn, and it is my honor to be here with you this morning. And whether you're here with us this morning or you're watching from home, we want you to know that we are sending you all of our love. We know that our Unity family is truly priceless. And so I know I have at least one first-time visitor. May I ask you to stand, please? And tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Jackie Lewis. I live in Surprise. I was from Seattle.
So are you here permanently now, or?
About 9 months of the year.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So we hope you'll consider coming back and being part of our family. We'd love to have you. We'll support you any way we can on your spiritual journey.
Thank you.
All right. My usual, a quick reminder that we're not going to be having fellowship after church. We will not be holding hands during the peace song. And once Rev Denise is done with her message, you are invited to exit out that lovely door with the green sign. It's like not to say hello, goodbye, whatever to your next person. You really need to go outside. I'm going to come up and try and start poking people. I'm not pinching yet, but I'll get there.
Now you.
You get pinched.
James a rebel, yay!
Always have been, always will be.
That's okay, I can handle that.
Okay, good.
All right. So on Thursdays at 11 a.m., Rev Denise will be facilitating a silent unity service. For those who are not familiar with that, it's a guided meditation. It's a good way to come and lift your spirits and be revved up for the rest of the week. So, are you going to do that in
my office?
Yeah, it's going to be held in our office. There's a space there where people can go and participate in that.
What time?
11. I said 11. 11, it's okay. Our prayer chaplain today is Joyce Miller. She'll be happy to pray with you.
Over there in the corner.
Over there in the corner. So if you have prayers, asking for prayer requests, or just to do gratitude things, she'd be happy to pray with you. Board member today is me. And you can ask me any questions you want about the board or about the church. I might think about answering you.
Nice.
Yeah, I might. So, the other thing I want to announce is we are looking for some people to be part of the committee to start looking for a new space for us. We do not want to wait for the last minute when our time is up here. So, if you're interested in participating in that, if you have any experience, if you're out and about a lot, and you see a nice space, a nice church, we'd like to know about it. So, if you're interested in doing that, please see me after the service so that I can get your contact information. Can you please join me in saying our mission statement? All right, together. Our mission is to provide a prosperous and loving community by connecting to God through prayer and following the teachings of Christ. Let's say that one more time, please. Our mission is to provide a prosperous and loving community by connecting to God through prayer and following the teachings of Christ.
If you know the song, the words to the chorus, love built a bridge, here we go. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? One more time. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time?
Thank you, James. All right, please join me in affirming our opening statement. Together, God's love heals all things. Let's say that again. God's love heals all things. Let's join me in prayer. And we say, Father, Mother God, living, loving presence. We know, Father, that we are blessed. We know we are your children, that we hold the keys to the kingdom. We send forth our love, our blessings to those who are in need, to those in the community who are hurting. We pray for healing. We pray for joy and happiness in their lives. We pray, Father, that our blessings continue and that we are blessed to share what we are blessed with. We ask this and all blessings in the name and through the power of the living Christ. And so it is. Amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever.
Today's daily word. Today's daily word is connection. I honor my connection with all people. No matter how great the distance that exists between me and the people I care about, I know we are connected by our love for one another. Today, I reestablish and strengthen this connection by reaching out, even if it's only to let someone know I'm thinking of them. Our connection is also kept strong through prayer. As I pray for those I care about, I bless them by holding them the highest vision for their lives, seeing them as healthy, prosperous, happy, and fulfilled. Whether we're in frequent contact or have fallen out of touch, my connection with my loved ones remains strong because we are one in God, one in love. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free. And we were all made to drink of one spirit. 1 Corinthians 2:12-13.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They're much more than I've ever known, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. My favorite part of the song. Oh, yeah! I don't do it nearly as good, but very happy.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Are you ready for my joke?
Oh boy.
Mary's questionable over here. All right, well, I have one. Except I can't think of it right now. Oh yeah, here we go. All right, so there's this church, and there's this lady who's the receptionist at the church. She's there first thing in the morning, and there's a gentleman that walks in, and he says he wants to speak to the head hog of the church. And she looks at him, and she's just appalled that he would call him that, you know. He says, this man has gone to seminary, he's studied for years, you really can't call him that. He should be Pastor Smith. And he goes, well, I was stopping by to drop off a $10,000 check. And she says, oh, I just heard Porky come in the back door.
You saved it.
Oh, so good to laugh. All right, well, today we're going to be talking about grace and forgiveness. Because forgiveness is unforgiveness, I should say, is the biggest block, one of the biggest blocks for us to experiencing God's grace. And I have good news to report that the board has agreed to change the name to Unity Light of Grace Spiritual Center. So in my mind, we are giving birth to a consciousness of grace. And that is my intention. So I will do my best to bring us all to that state of mind where we're living in a place of grace, which is a very special place. So I have this song, which is what got me motivated to do this whole Light of Grace, that got me to actually change jobs. Because, you know, I had an accounting career before I started this. So I'd like to share the words of this song because they're very, very important and special to me. But it starts out, shattered like you've never been before. The life you knew in 1,000 pieces on the floor. Words fall short in times like these. This world would drive you to your knees, and you think you're never going to get back to the you used to be. So I think all of us have been through these times where we've lost a job, we've lost a loved one, we've lost a friend, and we've gotten to that place where we just feel like life has fallen into 1,000 different pieces, and we don't feel like we're going to get back to where we used to be, which is very much where I was at the end of my accounting career. I was very dissatisfied with what I was doing, but I knew if I took this step that my current life as it was going to fall into 1,000 different little pieces. Because I would no longer be an accountant, which I had been all my life. I would no longer be making the money I was making as an accountant. I would no longer be with all the friends that I had at work. So I, on purpose, was changing my life in such a dramatic way. But then the verse says, tell your heart to beat again. Close your eyes and breathe it in. Let the shadows of the past fade away and step into the light of grace. Yesterday is a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Say goodbye to where you've been and tell your heart to beat again. I must have played this song 1,000 times before I told my boss I wanted to resign. Because that's exactly what I was wanting to do. I was wanting to put my past behind and start anew, to step into that light of grace and do my heart's desire. And then he goes on and says, just begin. Say that word begin and let that word wash over you. Because it's all right now. Love's healing's hands have pulled you through every situation. So get back up. Take that step number 1. Leave the darkness and feel the sun. And because your story is far from over and your journey has just begun. Your journey has just begun. Nothing is over. So I used to say that all day long, leaving the darkness and feeling the sun, because my story is far from over and I have just begun. He goes on to say, let every heartbreak and every scar be a picture that reminds you who has carried you this far. Let every scar, let every heartache be a reminder that God has seen you through each and every one of those. Because God and love sees further than you could ever see. So in this moment, heaven is working everything out for your highest good. So he's talking about the light of grace, stepping into that light of grace, knowing that every challenge we have had, God has been with us. God has seen us through it. And that now we're on a new journey. We're on this new journey of light and love and forgiveness. I had to throw that one in there. Forgiveness, because that's really one that we all have a problem with sometimes. And I know we've all been through difficult times. I know we've all been hurt at some point in time in our lives. And it's easy for us to just bury that hurt because we don't want to deal with it. So we just bury it in the moment and we move on. And then what happens is that hurt just keeps on getting a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger till we decide to face it, till we decide that we're going to do something about it. So I want you to hear me today that we're not doing forgiveness work really for the other person. You're doing it for yourself. Because that other person really doesn't know that you're hurt sometimes. That other person, it has no bearing on them. Your unforgiveness has no bearing on them. They are free out doing whatever they want. They've probably totally forgotten about whatever they said that hurt your feelings. So we're not forgiving in order to help the other person. We're forgiving to give a gift to ourselves. A gift of love, a gift of grace. And if we hear this in the Bible, which I have a couple examples from Matthew, Jesus says, someone came up to Jesus and said, if my brother has had fault with me, how many times should I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 77. Well, he's trying to tell them that you need to forgive them for however many times you need to forgive them. Not just 7 times. It should be continuous. And then he continues with a parable that he likes to do. He says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is an ever-expanding state of consciousness of love and of grace. Okay, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a king who wanted to take an accounting of his servants. And when he began to take the accounting, they brought to him one who owed 10,000 talents. That's a lot of money, 10,000. And as he could not pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, together with his wife and his children and all that he had, so that he could pay. And the servant fell down and worshipped him and said, my Lord, have patience with me. I will pay you back everything. And when the master of that servant had pity, he released him and canceled all his debt. Canceled him. That's the power of love. That's the power of grace. We're talking about debt here, which debt means that we're in a place of limitation. We're in a place, a negative place, right? And we've been in that negative place for 10,000 times. We've done 10,000 things that were not so good in a negative light. And yet this king of the kingdom of heaven, he asked for patience. Let me pay you back. But the king of love and grace says, no, I will cancel your debt right now. I set you free right now. Because that's what the power of love and grace does. It's like that. And he is forgiven. But the catch is, later on in the story, the servant then fell down and worshipped him and said, Lord, you have patience with me and I will pay you everything. And the master of the great servant had great pity and released him and canceled his debt. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 pennies and seized him and tried to choke him, saying to him, give me what you owe me. So this fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, have patience with me, I will pay you. But he was not willing, and he went and he had him put into prison until he could pay what he owed him. So then the fellow servants go back to the original king and let him know what happened. And of course, it's not good news for him. He was not willing to forgive. So he took himself out of this divine grace, out of this consciousness of love and grace. He did that to himself. And he ends up being kicked out of the kingdom. And of course there's gnashing of the teeth, and he did this terrible thing. So I want you to see that there's this consciousness of forgiveness. And if we don't forgive others, then how do we stay in that same place of forgiveness for ourselves? We can't. It's impossible. We have to be in that place of love, that place of grace, that place of forgiveness. And we have to give that to others in order for us to receive it in return. That's the key. And normally it's easier for us to forgive others first, right? I know I always save myself for last, right? I'll get around eventually to forgiving myself. But that's the key. If we want to forgive ourselves, we have to be able to use that consciousness of forgiveness to forgive someone else. Because if we don't do it, we take ourselves out of that flow, out of that divine energy, out of that divine love that's in the kingdom of heaven, and we separate ourselves from it because we choose not to forgive someone. And there's another story that Jesus tells. And he says, he saw a man who was blind from his mother's womb. So this person has been blind before he was even born. And the disciples asked him, saying, "Teacher, who did the sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" So here are the disciples. They're trying to figure out who's the one responsible for this child's blindness. It has to be somebody's fault. Who did something wrong? Was it the baby or was it the parents? Who is at fault? Who is guilty? The disciples are all concerned about that. And Jesus ends up saying, neither did the sin of the child or his parents, but this is the work of God that can be seen in this child. So he's saying, who cares? Who cares how it happened? But that's where we go, right? If we get hurt, we're figuring out, or we have something bad happen to us, and we're always trying to figure out, what was it that I did? What was it that I said? What was it that I was thinking? What is it that I did? And Jesus says, who cares? Who cares what we did? Who cares what we think? Who cares what we said? The issue here is that we want to be able to see. He wants to be able to see and quit being blind. So guess what he has to do? He has to recognize the Christ. And this blind man comes up to Jesus and he would like to see. And Jesus says, well, no problem. He goes, he gets some dirt off the ground and he makes some spittle and he puts it on his eyes and he tells him to go wash his eyes in the river. And he goes and washes his eyes in the river, and of course he can see. He can see. But he doesn't really know who healed him because he couldn't see him. He just knew the consciousness of the Christ. And he knew the Christ was there. And he asked them to heal him. And it happened. And we didn't have to know how he got blind. It was that beautiful consciousness and grace that healed his eyes. And so, of course, word gets out that this man who's been blind all his life now sees, and the Pharisees hear about it, and they're just having a cow. For one, Jesus healed him on the Sabbath day, which we know is a no-no in the law of Moses. It's a no-no. But I want you to hear that Jesus always heals people on the Sabbath day. And do you want to know why? Because the Sabbath day is a day of resting. The Sabbath day is a day that we're supposed to be in a peaceful place of silence. And that is the only time when this healing is going to occur, when we're in a place of oneness with God, which is a place of silence. It's a place of peace. So every healing that Jesus does is done on the Sabbath day, which really makes these Pharisees, who are letter of the law, religious people, they're following the laws of Moses to the T. We're not supposed to be doing anything on Sunday, it's the Sabbath day. Yet there's some Pharisees that say, well, he cannot be a sinner, he just healed somebody. So there is a division now in the Pharisees, that egotistical part of us that wants to believe in the letter of the law. There's a big division going on now. Some people think he's a sinner, some people think he can't be a sinner, he just healed somebody. So they go after this boy, and they want to know, were you really blind? And isn't that what we do when some people hear of a miracle, then they weren't really sick to begin with? So they want to know if he was really blind. So they go ask this child, were you born blind? And he says, yes, I was. And who healed you? And he knew his name was Jesus, but he had not seen him before, and he didn't know where Jesus went. And the Pharisees are not happy with that. They go find his parents, because they still don't believe he was born blind. And they find his parents, and they say, was he really born blind? And they say, yes. So now they're just really upset because they don't know what's going on. And they end up kicking this poor little kid out of the synagogue, and he can't attend there anymore because they're afraid. But Jesus comes back to him and lets him know that he loves him and he's there and he can be a part of his people. And so he has a place to go. So what do? We have a story here about forgiving ourselves, because most of the time when we're having problems, like I said, we like to beat ourselves up, right? We beat ourselves up, we want to know what we did wrong, what belief we're believing that's not right. How did we create this in our lives? We have a story from Jesus, a story that tells you it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you got there. Nobody cares how you got there. The point is to forgive yourself and let yourself be healed by that Christ consciousness, that consciousness of grace that we're talking about. So we've got two stories. And the other story tells us that we have to forgive others in order to forgive ourselves, which is kind of the same as in the Lord's Prayer. It says, please forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. There's that last half on there. As we forgive our debtors, that we will be forgiven. So, forgiveness is a key, right? Forgiveness is an important part in loving ourselves and attaining this consciousness of grace. So naturally I have some of my own examples, right? Two today. Two. I'll start with my dad. My dad and I had a glorious relationship. I was very close to my dad. And he died of prostate cancer. And I moved to Arizona in this part of life where he's actually dying. And I got to go back to Indiana twice because they told me my dad was dying both those times, but he did not. So I knew I couldn't get back a third time because I couldn't afford to go back a third time. And so my dad died without me being there. And I beat myself up so badly about that. So badly. My dad loved me so much. How could I not be there when he needs me the most? And I buried that and I carried it for a really long time. So I went to a service over at Eden in Phoenix, and the minister there at the time said, do you have something that you've been carrying for a really long time that you would really like to get rid of? And I thought, well, I guess I do. I would really like to get rid of all this guilt I have for not being there for my dad. So we said a prayer, and I went home. And lo and behold, that night, because I was willing to forgive myself for what had happened, that night I saw my dad in a dream. And he didn't say a word to me, But my dad had the most beautiful blue eyes. I could look in his eyes and I could see nothing but love in his eyes. And I always felt bad that he had not seen my children. Well, both my kids were in this dream. So right there is an act of grace. All that guilt, all that shame I had for not being there when my dad died went away just like that. One dream, and it was all gone. And I felt extremely free after that dream because I've been carrying this around, this big bag of guilt around with me for a long, long time. And in one dream, it all went away. And I was sharing this with one of my counselors, and she says, "Did you ever think that your dad didn't want you there with him?" And I thought, no, that never crossed my mind. Well, it's totally possible that my dad didn't want me to see him suffering like he was suffering. So that whole thing was all taken away in just a short period of time. And then my second example, of course, you know I didn't get along very well with my mother. And I hadn't talked to her for 2 years, and I go again to Unity of Phoenix workshop, right, on forgiveness. And what do they do? They tell me, if you don't forgive this person in your lifetime, you will experience it again. Now, I didn't know if that was true or not, but the possibility of it made me do forgiveness work with my mother. I'm certainly not going to live through this experience again. So I did forgiveness work, right? But I was doing forgiveness work from a place of fear, right? Because I didn't want to experience it again. So one day I'm doing some meditation work, and I knew I still had some more forgiveness work with my mom, and I just asked God, I said, what else is it that I need to forgive with my mother? And I didn't get an answer right away, so I went and took a shower, and I hear the question, how did your mother make you feel? And I said, well, my mother made me feel like I was unlovable. And the voice came back very clearly and said, you have always been loved. And I sat down on the floor in my shower and cried. Power of forgiveness right here. Cried. So naturally, I have to change my whole story, right? I can't tell my victimhood story of my mom. Because God told me, I have always been loved. Always been loved. And so then those memories of mom and I going to the store to buy material and patterns to make a dress, which she always let me choose what I wanted. And that was a fun time, a fun memory with my mom. And she would make my clothes, and I would be so proud to wear them because nobody else had a dress like mine. And then I remember that it was my mom who made me, she made me go to college. She wanted to make sure I went to college. Well, that was certainly an act of love. And it was my mom, when I heard that I had to have surgery on my throat, I hadn't talked to her for 2 years. I want you to remember this. I called her because if one of my children was going to have surgery, I would want to know about it. But my mom was a very negative person, so I knew as soon as I told her, she would come up with 10 more things for me to worry about it, right? Because that's how I always had been in the past. So I get my courage up to call her. I get my strength up to know that I'm going to have to deal with whatever negativity she's going to throw at me, right? But I've done my forgiveness work. So I call her. Naturally, she's happy to hear from me. She's happy to hear from me. And I called her, and I told her about my surgery. And you want to know what she said to me? She says, Denise, your faith will see you through this surgery. Now, she totally blew my mind. My mother had never said one positive thing about any challenge in my life. I actually quit telling her my problems because I didn't want to hear all the extra that went with it. And here, in this one moment, when I needed her the most, I needed her the most, and she says, Denise, your faith will see you through. And it did. And we became very good friends after that. And then when my mother was getting ready to make her transition, I saw her about a couple of weeks before that. And I got my dream of just talking to her and laughing with her and crying with her, which was what I always really wanted. And in that moment, she told me, Denise, always follow your heart and do not let anybody take that away from you. Do not let that happen. Whatever your heart's desire was. So you know what? When I was afraid of changing jobs from an accountant to minister, when I was listening to that song over and over and over again, when I was walking to my boss's desk to let her know that I was resigning, I heard my mother's words to always follow my heart and never let anyone take that away from me. Boom, once again, I got the strength to do what I needed to do. So forgiveness is a powerful, powerful tool. And it didn't come easy. It took me a lot of years to do it. But it was well worth the effort. Well worth the effort to do. So forgiveness is a key to experiencing grace. And that's what I call that dream with my father. That's what I call with those words that came out of my mother's mouth are acts of grace. They're not something that just logically happened. They were not something that were planned. It was divine, to me, divine intervention. That consciousness of grace that came when I needed it the most. I needed it the most. And those words from my mother were powerful because she had never been positive the whole 40 years I knew her before that. Had she been a positive person, that your faith will get you through would not have been as meaningful as it was in that moment. So then you kind of get the understanding of why things happened the way they did. I needed a very strong knowing that my faith would see me through, and I got it through my mother. So forgiveness is, to me, a magical tool. It's not easy. I know it's not easy. And a lot of times I just start with, God, I am willing to forgive this person. I'm willing. I don't want to hold on to this anymore. I don't want it messing up my blessings. I don't want it getting in my way of my amazing future. So I'm willing to forgive. And then I have an affirmation that Reverend Flo gave me. She says, you can say, I forgive everyone and everything forgives me. So that way you're not even putting a person to it. You're not putting that person that you're wanting to forgive. You're just making a general statement. I forgive everyone and everything forgives me. And eventually you can get a little more detailed as to who you're really wanting to forgive. And any time I have told God I am willing to forgive someone, it just happens. I will maybe go 5 or 6 months and I'll hear that person's name and it no longer affects me anymore. So the thing with forgiveness, they tell you to forgive and forget. Well, with forgiveness, it's getting rid of all the emotion that's attached to the experience. You're always going to remember it happened. But you can let go of all the negative emotion that you have attached to that experience. And as I have experienced forgiveness, I'll have done my forgiveness work, and then something will happen 2 or 3 years later, and it will come up again, and I think, oh, I thought I did my forgiveness work on that. But you get to see at a different level, because we're always growing in consciousness. So a year later, I'm in a higher place in consciousness, and I can forgive in a greater way. So I do some forgiveness when I first do it, and it may come back again, and I get rid of more. Then it comes back again, and I get rid of more, to the point where I have no emotion attached to it. None. No emotion. I can tell you the story, and it doesn't affect me at all. I can hear somebody's name that hurt me in the past, and I can say, oh good, I'm glad they're doing great. And that's not easy. Somebody who really has stabbed you in the back, and you hear their name and just say, oh great, I'm glad they've made their success, they've done something wonderful. But that is when you truly know that you have forgiven somebody. When you're happy that they have succeeded, when you're happy that they're doing well. And that takes a lot of work. I've had 2 ex-husbands, I know. I've had people at work who have stabbed me in the back, you know. It takes work. But if we ever achieve this consciousness of grace, then no one can hurt you. That's the whole key here. If we can reach this consciousness of grace, or we're in this consciousness of love 24/7, no one could ever hurt you, because you're not in a place where you can be hurt. You could hear their words of criticism, and it's going to just go right over your head. Whatever they do, you're going to understand that they're in their place doing what they have to do, and what they're doing really has no effect on you. If I would have been in a place 24/7 with my mom, maybe I would have seen that my mom was mistreated as a child. And maybe I would have understood that she couldn't show love because she was never taught how to do that in her childhood. And then her actions would have never hurt me, because I would have understood where she is. Now, unfortunately, a child is not that smart, or at least I wasn't. Child just sees it as mom's not being loving. But if you come from a place of love, then you see with the eyes of God, and you can see that that person might have grown up in a situation where they can't give you what you're wanting from them. They can't give it because they have not done their own forgiveness work. They have not done their own self-love work. And they simply can't give it to you. It's not because they don't want to give it to you. They don't know how. They don't know how. If someone has been abused in their childhood and never treated with the love that they deserve, they don't know how to give that to somebody else until they've done their own healing work, until they've done their own forgiveness work. They don't know how. And so it may seem like they're hurting you, but in all truthfulness, they're just doing what they have been taught to do. Now, some people are strong enough to break those old habits. Like my mother never hugged me. She never told me she loved me. But you better believe I hugged my kids. I told my kids that I loved them. But I could have repeated her pattern if I chose to, but I didn't. But some people don't know how to get out of that cycle. Some people don't have a room full of loving people to help support them and to show them the way true love's supposed to be. We have been very fortunate to be blessed with a community that knows love, a community that can lift us up, a community that can help us heal. But not everybody has that. And so yes, sometimes they do something out of anger because they're hurt and they don't feel good about themselves. But if we come from a place of love, then we see that they're hurt. We see they're coming from a place that can't give me what I want from them, and that's okay. And that's okay. And I can hold them in that space of love, giving them that opportunity to heal themselves. But forgiveness starts with us. Forgiveness starts with us forgiving others. And then we learn how to forgive ourselves. And I'd like to say I've gone through this lifetime without hurting anybody. But that would not be a true statement. I filed for divorce from 2 husbands, so you got to know I've hurt both of them. And I have forgiven for them for what they did, and I don't know if they have forgiven me, but you got to see that's not the point. They may forgive me, they may not forgive me, but the point is I have forgiven them, and that's all I need to worry about. So forgiveness is our key to that consciousness of grace, and it's worth all the effort we do, because it's kind of like a magic wand. When we're willing to face whatever's hurting us, when we're willing to let it go, when we're willing to just give it to God, God takes care of the rest. He really does. You may read a book that makes you cry, you may see a movie that makes you cry. Something will happen to help heal whatever that hurt is that you're carrying. And then one day you notice, wow, that name really doesn't bother me anymore. Cool. So it's worth it. It's worth it. Because we don't want to be separated from our divine love. We don't want to be separated from this beautiful consciousness of grace. But unforgiveness will do that. Unforgiveness separates us from all the good that we deserve. So it's time to just say, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to let this person stand in the way of my highest good. I'm not going to let this person stand in the way of my miracles. I'm not going to let this person stand in my way of my greatness. It's not worth it. And trust me, we're not doing anything to them. If I didn't forgive my ex-husband, it's not doing anything to him. It only hurts me. So I forgive because I deserve to experience greater love in my life. It has nothing to do with the other person. So let's take some time in prayer and meditation. So let's close our eyes. And take a deep breath. And know that you're in a very safe place, because you're in a place of love and light and grace. So we take this opportunity to feel that love and that grace. That part of us that tells us that we have always been loved. You have always been loved. So take that time to feel what that feels like, to know that every second of every day that you are always loved by God. No matter what you have experienced in life, God's love has always been there, patiently waiting for us to forgive so we can feel that connection to God. So if there's anybody that you need to forgive or you want to forgive yourself, take this opportunity to just say to God, I am willing to forgive this person. I'm willing to forgive myself. For I want to experience the fullness of your love and grace. And I let no one stand in the way of that. So here it is, God. I hand it over to you. I hand over these feelings of hurt, these feelings of pain, feelings of not being loved, I surrender them all over to you. And I know your love and grace will transform them into even more love and more blessings and more beautiful experiences in my life. So I choose to let it go. I've held on to it long enough. It serves me no more. And I can feel this rush of God's love just pouring into my heart. Celebrating, rejoicing, saying, yes, my child, I love you. I am here for you. My love heals your heart. My love heals all things. So let your heart be filled with this beautiful love, this beautiful grace that is so amazing. So we just take this beautiful feeling of love and grace into the silence, knowing that we are forgiven as we forgive. So let yourself become aware of your surroundings and wrap all this beautiful energy of love and grace under your feet. And feel the freedom in knowing that you just let go of something and now you're ready to experience even more of God's love. Ready to experience all the amazing things, all the gifts that God has for each and every one of us. So we just say thank you, God, for taking it away. Thank you, God, for turning that negative energy into love. And we know it is done. Amen.
Amazing grace,